88 years. That is a staggering 32,120 days I've walked this earth. Yet for most of them, I was a ghost in my own life. I'm Arthur, and at 88, the view from the finish line is hauntingly clear. I spent over half a century climbing ladders that leaned against the wrong walls. I had the prestige and a bank account that never hit zero, yet I felt utterly bankrupt inside. I was the loneliest man in every crowded gala, fighting an invisible war against a world I thought was my enemy. I traded the irreplaceable laughter of my children for success, only to realize at 88 that I was just a rich man wandering in the dark. At the height of my career, I was the man everyone envied, an executive, with a corner office and a title that commanded the room. But behind that mahogany desk, I was a prisoner of my own perception. I walked through the world with a clenched jaw, convinced that every interaction was a calculated attack. If a colleague offered a suggestion, I heard an insult to my competence. If my wife was too tired to smile when I returned home, I didn't see her exhaustion, I saw a lack of respect. I was a high-powered VP, yet I was reacting to life with the fragile, defensive ego of a frightened child. I mistook my defensive anger for strength, never realizing that my armor was actually a cage. I was a victim in a tailored suit, projecting my internal chaos onto everyone around me, burning bridges while convinced I was simply defending my territory. The most painful realization of my 88 years is this: while I was barking orders in boardrooms, I wasn't the man in charge. I was merely a puppet to a terrified 7-year-old version of myself. You see, when I was a boy, I watched my father return from the factory with trembling hands and a broken spirit. I saw the world treat him like a ghost, a nothing. In that silence, my young mind forged a dangerous vow. I will never be small. I will fight before they can step on me. Decades later, that vow became my curse. When my wife asked me a simple question or a waiter made a mistake, I wasn't hearing them. I was hearing the echoes of my father's struggle. I would snap, I would belittle, and I would dominate, thinking I was being strong. In reality, I was just that helpless little boy, flailing his arms in the dark because he was still scared of being invisible. I spent my life reacting to a reality that ended 80 years ago. I stayed a victim of my past because, God help me, staying angry felt safer than admitting I was still that shivering child. At 88, I've learned that we often misuse the word trigger. We blame our outbursts on a rude driver or a spilled glass of milk, but a trigger is just a tiny spark. On its own, it has no power to destroy. The reason I used to explode, ruining entire evenings and scarring my family, was because of the gunpowder I carried inside my chest. For decades, I walked around packed with the explosives of unhealed wounds, suppressed fears of inadequacy, and a lifetime of accumulated resentment. I was a walking bomb, waiting for an excuse to go off. When someone pulled the trigger, a minor mistake, or a perceived slight, I would blow up, and then, with a sick kind of self-righteousness, I would point at them and scream, "Look what you made me do." But they didn't make me do anything. They just provided the spark. I was the one who provided the explosives. Until you unpack your own emotional gunpowder, you are a danger to everyone you love. Stop blaming the world for the fires you refuse to extinguish within yourself. For most of my 88 years, I lived with a relentless enemy, the voice in my head. At 3 a.m., it would whisper that I was a fraud, that my success was a fluke, and that I was a failure as a father. I actually believed this inner critic was my secret weapon. I thought that by being more cruel to myself than anyone else could be, I was building a shield of perfection. I convinced myself that this vicious internal tyrant was the engine of my ambition. I was wrong. That voice wasn't the voice of truth or some higher wisdom. It was just a terrified, misguided part of me trying to prevent rejection. It was like a friend giving disastrous advice out of pure panic. You cannot drown this voice with work, whiskey, or wealth. At 88, I finally learned that you don't fight this voice, you parent it. You have to tell it, I know you're scared, and thank you for trying to protect me, but I am the adult now. You can rest. It took me nearly 9 decades to understand that you cannot win a war against yourself. I spent years trying to suppress that inner critic, trying to bury it under a mountain of achievements and 80-hour work weeks, but resistance only made it louder. The breakthrough didn't come from a fight, it came from a surrender. I realized that this harsh, internal tyrant was actually just a bodyguard who didn't know the war was over. I learned to practice a strange, quiet kind of grace. When that old anxiety would flare up, telling me I wasn't enough, I would close my eyes, place a hand over my heart, and breathe. I began to speak to that part of me as if it were a frightened guest. I'd say, I see you. I know you're trying to keep me safe from the pain I felt at 7, but I am 88 now. I have survived everything the world threw at me. You don't have to drive the car anymore. By giving that terrified voice permission to sit in the back seat and simply rest, I finally found the silence I had been chasing since my youth. My greatest regret at 88 isn't a missed business deal. It's the atmosphere I created at my own dinner table. I thought I was a provider because I bought the big house and paid for the elite colleges. I was proud of the trust funds I built, but I was blind to the truth. Children don't mirror your bank account, they mirror your nervous system. When I sat there, tense, angry, and mentally miles away, my children didn't see a successful man. They saw a father who was never truly home. They absorbed my stress and concluded they weren't enough to make me happy. The most precious gift you can give your children is your own healing. If you don't mend your wounds, your children will spend their lives bleeding from them. I gave them gold, but I accidentally left them my ghosts. At 88, the noise of the world has finally faded, leaving only the truth. I can't go back and attend the recitals I missed, or unsay the words I spat in anger while carrying that heavy gunpowder. All I have left is this moment, and the hope that you won't wait as long as I did. Stop fighting a world that isn't actually against you. The safety you've been chasing through titles, territory, and trophies was never out there. It was an inside job all along. Peace is not something you earn. It is something you claim by finally stopping the run. Unpack your explosives. Tell that terrified child inside you that the war is over and it's finally safe to sleep. Go be happy not for your resume or your ego, but for the people who want to love the real you, not the suit you wear. Everything you ever needed is already yours. Take it from an old man who learned it late. Life is too short to spend it fighting ghosts.